Okay, we're back here at House Education on January 15th, just having a quick committee chat following the testimony received, really to sort of ask, based on that, if there is anything specific you all would like further before the committee. So let me ask that question first. And if there's nothing specific, that's fine as well.
This isn't specific, but it is reflective of the testimony we just had, and I think it was your question. Asking for data, modeling to back up some of those things. And I heard a lot of, well, we could be happy to come back in and share, discuss the things that you want and come back with you with that. And I'm, fine with that, but there was a lot of unknowns that this was based on. So I guess I'm not asking for a specific, but that is my need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess one thing we'll have to consider is what comes first. Do we want like specifics on this proposal, or do we want to?
Yeah, I mean, I could answer that, but I don't even think you need to answer that right now. What I guess I'm saying is, as we're moving forward, this is nothing.
Yeah, definitely.
Data.
Some of the data, I can't remember specifically what Representative Brady asked for, but I do remember it's one of those things you could click on. Oh, how many mergers would it take to create this district? So you could go on the mapping tool, overlay the hybrid, for example, and then see how many existing districts exist and count them up.
Maybe just on the heels of that, because Aaron asked about costs, and so obviously there are no answers for that, but maybe there's an answer for this one. Where is the cost? How does it get absorbed?
So the implementation costs they're part of Act 73. I don't know if it speaks to it specifically with a dollar amount. But yeah, that remains, and what are those costs that need to be borne locally and borne statewide? Combining financial, getting on a common financial software, that seems to be a state expense.
Yeah.
So that's just a small.
But to be clear, it's the taxpayers that pay, whether it's state or local. So I think it's just really important that we state that clearly. It's on the back of taxpayers.
To say, let's remember, right?
Well, I'm not. I mean, to be fair, there's grant money for some stuff and all of that, and I appreciate that. But the bulk of what we're doing is on the
Yeah, it's all whether kind of like it's part of you got to make it work within your foundation formula, or the state's going to pay for it on a bigger pot. Yeah, Jana.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we need to dig deeper into that list of criteria that's in Act 73, because I have a memory of sort of how we created that list. And I don't think at the time we really assigned priority. And I don't think we knew at that point, like which of those criteria were in tension with each other. So I think as the conversation has advanced, I mean, it certainly has, we need to really go back and take a comprehensive look at that. Like what doesn't work together? What did we miss? I think there's, in terms of educational opportunities for kids, we missed a lot.
So, I think that when we created that list, we sort of said, what are all the things we want to be considered?
Yeah.
And by considered, we didn't mean it actually has to be in there, but just that have it as part of the process of creating. I think it's a good point that we find out which ones are in tension with one another.
And that will also help with our communication with who are still struggling, trying to understand what we're doing. I appreciate that request. Exactly.
I'm just going to go back to the conversation I sort of started, and that we'll dive deeper into, but just for you all to think about is sort of what are those sort of core principles that we want to have. As I think about the ones I believe in, I would like to see the concept of a non-operating district be gone. But that was part of the original 454. I think that there's probably a lot of consensus here that somewhere construction aid has to fall into this and be part of it. And so just think about what some of those others are. I have others myself, but we'll save it for a bigger discussion. I think, like I said, I think we'll start off just making a list of everybody's and then sort of hone in on a few. maybe Representative Harples is that she wants everybody to eat the same thing on the same day.
Sure sounded like it. I think Taco Tuesdays needs to be solidified. as that.
I know she
It
was
would be kind of amazing if that was the only thing that.
I think the one thing we could.
Representative Harples, I think you have something more serious to add.
I was just, no, it was more of a question, like, as we think about the principles that we want embedded within Act 73, like, is the discussion, I want Act 73 to cover this, or is it like, I want somehow in our planning for us to find a way to acknowledge this that can't really be codified?
So I'm gonna say, it's not about core part of Act 73 as much as it is core beliefs in redistricting, if that's even a route we go.
Right, so can I give you an example of like what's driving my question? Like, for one of the things I'm thinking about, two of the things I'm thinking about are like, I want generations of our children to remain feeling connected to their communities. And I want to know that our communities are going to have the opportunity to grow related to what we do. I don't know how to get that into how we redistrict.
Yeah, I think for me, and again, when I'm sitting here, I'm sitting in this chair, makes me be a big authority. I just want, when I'm talking about stuff, it's just me.
Yeah, like, would that be an example of something you would want to hear, or is that like, that's just?
I guess for me, it needs to be more specific than that.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
core principle.
right,
And, because you have to define, what do you mean by community? You
right,
know, what does a community look like in 20 years? That sort of thing.
yeah.
What does it mean to be connected?
Right. And how can also redistricting relate to any of that as we do that, right? You know, maybe it's something about like internships or our work-based learning models.
Then we're too specific.
Okay. Well, right, I'm not saying like every kid needs an internship in each town. No, that's not any. I just don't know how to address that.
I think we'll just kind of work it out as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I actually think that core values or core principles are important to guide our work and the details. Right, and so I appreciate you saying we'll keep that, but I just want, there's more than that one. I actually frankly really liked what you just said about communities and having our kids not only there, but engaged and want to be there, you know? And I want Vermonters to know that we support that, and education plays a big role in that.
It's one of the biggest fears I hear about from my community.
Yeah.
I'm in the ones that stand to potentially, even though it's not written into Act 73, get shut down. And one of the biggest fears that I hear is we will lose our community centers. I also hear the argument that schools don't have to be the community centers.
Sure.
But, you know, I hear other people pushing back on that. But like, that is what people are afraid of, is that we will lose our sense of community. And so how can we do this without that happening?
And that's the way it is in Grand Isle County. But in Grand Isle County, we had a number of schools. We're down to 3, one in Alberg, which goes through 8th grade. And then there's one in Grand Isle and one in South Hero. One of the schools, and I can't remember which one, when they get done 6th grade, they actually leave the island to go to another school. And everybody in all of Grand Isle, there is no high school. And as early as the 1950s, back when I can remember older people than myself, they went from the islands to one of the schools. They would either go to St. Albans or across the bridge to New York. There was no Missisquoi, so they didn't, but some went to the Swanton High School, some went to Milton, and a few even that could afford or, you know, take the time went to the Burlington school system. So that's always been that way. There's never, but they still have a sense of community in the little schools. And that's what they're really afraid of losing. Although this never says that you have to, but they have on their own closed 2 schools already.
I mean, this is the hurt is because of declining enrollment. I sound like a broken record. That's what's driving this. That's a hard thing to sort of control. I had a much more positive point than that,
I'll give you one.
but it's out of my head.
Because I mean, like you, I live in an area where schools have closed, not only in my district, but all around me. And there are, you know, everybody has the same fear. I've had the same fear about the loss of the school in a town. But sometimes you go through that loss, and when the community is engaged in the decision-making around it, they come up with other things, and I use Brookline so often as an example. They closed about 15 years ago, could be close to 20 now, and merged with the neighboring school and became Newbrook. And there were some intentional decisions that were made at the time to ease that pain that everyone was feeling about the loss of the community. And it's been incredibly successful because of the engagement in the community. So, and it sounds like yours is probably something.
So,
Before I forget, I just want to add we have to, I do want to, recall what's actually in Act 73. And that there is a sort of sparsity, small by necessity, work that's being done, we're going to learn more about. And that there are small school grants for those schools that are small by necessity. Yes, sparsity. Anyway, Rob,
okay,
sorry.
so let hypothetical, everything's hypothetical at this point, right? So hypothetically, we go to 13 districts because that was the number that was. And so, I mean, because what I'm seeing now is my home district closing 2 schools. Now, in these larger districts, will they have the power to just really kind of look at their inventory of schools and then say, okay, this is how we see the future?
I think that there
Is
is
that
the work of the recommendation of the Commission on the Future of Public Education was that the power of school boards by and large does not change.
okay?
And then there are some specific things about if a school board decides it wants to close the school, it lays out some recommendations to follow.
Okay.
But it is the same system that we have today, except on a larger scale.
Okay.
And with the foundation formula, that district is gonna get if the foundation formula goes in place, that district will get a certain amount of money and they can decide what they want to do with it. And if it's still supporting a smaller school in a certain area for certain reasons, that they decide, that I would assume that they would continue doing.
I think you'll find this presentation on equitable budgeting and how they sort of handle it, and it's probably quite fascinating.
There is representative government. And we all know that the fear, because we're all dealing with it, and we did in Act 46, that the fear of a much larger board, smaller number of people representing, if any, the way we did in Act 46, we said every school district needs at least one, every town, needs at least one representative on the board. But when you're representing 8,000 students, one in a tiny little town doesn't feel very much. And I don't even know if we'd have that. We haven't gone through that process. So I'm just trying to acknowledge the challenge around feeling like you don't really have a voice anymore in the decisions that are being made about you. And that's the fear in our communities today, and it's real.
Absolutely. Kind of to reset myself, right? But that would be government ops deciding on the actual. Right.
Oh, yeah, they
So-
decide that.
Luckily, that's one of the decisions we don't have.
Well, I don't know, because everything we do sends it over to them.
Well, at some point, somebody will have to make a recommendation as to board size
Right, and somebody has to make a recommendation about district size. as
and
well.
district size, yes.
But after that, it's,
You understand that the districts, since we all know we can't have 50 members on the school board, and if we're going to go with large,
I totally understand.
so it's still on us.
Yeah.
They just do the details. That's all.
I just wanted to say that Chris and I both live in the town of Milton, and we have our own school district superintendent, everything right in the town, K through 12. I haven't talked to anyone. Do you know what our school system, what our superintendent, have they communicated to you as to what they feel about what's going on?
To me?
Yeah.
Yes, and they have actually publicly said in a school board meeting that they are in agreement with the legislators of Milton who agree with Act 73, and they do agree that there needs to be consolidation.
I got 5 representatives.
Do you think that when people, not us, but the general public talks about there needs to be consolidation? I guess this is a question for anyone. Do you think that they mean consolidation of districts, or do you think they really mean consolidation of schools?
Depends on the person answering.
Yeah, I think it really does
Yeah,
depend on the person. I think people
the
say,
superintendent is talking about consolidation of districts.
so I think I would answer, some people are like, we have 53 superintendents, that's crazy, we need to consolidate. That doesn't mean buildings. Other people say, really, we have schools that have 50 or under kids in them? That's crazy, we need to consolidate buildings. Or, but, yeah, especially high schools.
Administrative costs, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some confusion that comes into this conversation because people are meaning different things.
Yes.
And so when they're like telling us this is what we think we should do, it's hard for me sometimes to be like, do you think that we should consolidate districts but try and keep our schools open? Or are you really saying get rid of the small schools?
So I think it is, I think you bring up a good point as we talk in here,
Yeah,
we should talk about consolidated governance
yeah.
or consolidated
Right.
footprint.
So. Gonna preface my last, even though it's already come out of my mouth. I can't totally speak for my superintendent.
The email's already started coming in.
I know, they have not. No, but just to be fair, I can't, and their thought process is fluid.
But that's a general feeling that came out of school board meeting.
I'd say that Milton needs to be an outlier. If you read the public statements, a lot of other Shipping County superintendents and school boards will get a different flavor.
Yeah, that was noted in some conversations.
Yes.
Understatement, kind of based on the emails we get.
As we contemplate, I'm not saying that we should, take this as a, the considerations, the big long list of considerations is something we are gonna have to look at and think about the weight we personally want to put on each and every one of them. But since I was part of the Commission on the Future of Public Education, I would also remind you that there was a recommendation that we not adhere strictly to the 4,000 to 8,000 limit. So I just put that out there as a recommendation that the commission made to consider.
I don't know how this would fit into any amendments to Act 73, but in thinking about who would it be good to hear from, and maybe this isn't right away as we're talking about districting. But prior to the vote, it might be good to hear from communities that have had their schools consolidated, who feel like they still have a sense of community, because you were mentioning that there were some communities that, have been able to move on, and how did they do that? Like, so I don't know who to ask about that.
Well, I'll tell you, just to debate the point a little bit, I spent a lot of time thinking about what's our role and what's sort of the role of the agency or the role of a community or all of that.
No, I understand that that's their role, but like in voting for things, it'd be better to, I feel like it would be easier to vote knowing what's possible. Does that make sense?
I think, I'm not saying
Yeah.
yours is not a good idea, but you will see a bias from me frequently about needing to be specific.
Yeah.
So to have somebody come in and say, here's how we kept our sense of community, that's a hard thing to define. But, so I'll tell you that, got two communities in Addison County that closed their school years and years ago. And I think I'm not sure that that's not a fine idea to have, when we have some time. Somebody come in and just sort of say, here's what happened. Here's how we're battling it.
Where the nuance lies that, man, is the one I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting case study. Yeah.
It is because, the two towns they're close physically, they're next door to each other.
Yeah.
Not a long travel time, although they have to cross a river. But anyway, but they share a post office. They share a fire department that's called Newbrook. And they went through quite a lot of pain during the process of going through it. The fear of the loss of closing their school was that the community was going to fall
Yeah.
apart. And it was really hard, but there were things that made it better. And one of them was a daycare center opened up in that school, like within a year afterwards. So the school was still used, there were still children in it. It was a different thing. So I'm giving you that one example and telling you that there are a lot of places that don't have any of those things in place. That's why it passed in our area that number of years ago. But I have other school districts right now who don't want to merge because they don't have those things that are helping them through it. And it was still tough for Brooklyn.
Right.
And I'll tell you where I get frustrated is, the term community is a vague term.
Yeah.
What we're really talking about are town lines that were drawn in the 1600s. And for some reason, we continue to identify these. I think about Newbrook, and really you are sharing a school together so that you almost haven't lost that
Sense of.
sense of community. And all of a sudden, those town lines don't actually matter that much. The community is just a bigger community now.
As much as the important part.
Yeah. I think about my town of Cornwall. We don't have a store. We have town hall and a church that nobody attends. And our school needs tens of millions of dollars worth of work. And we are just about to start a really hard conversation as to whether it's really worth investing in when Middlebury, just as an example, has capacity to take all of our kids. Many of us, when people ask you where you're from, you live in Cornwall, you really often say Middlebury because it's easier to identify, but also that's so anyway, this whole idea of what community means, it's going to differ to various people. I'd like to think that these lines that were drawn back in the 1600s does not define community.
I mean, so I have a different perspective being from Glover, I think one of the things is that like we all went to this school and we moved back to our town and now our kids are going to school and their parents went to school. And like, so those generational lines in that neighborhood, is one thing that exists within a town. And I also can tell you that the town of Glover, and this is just one example, but it really is different than the town of Barton and it's different than the town of Albany. And, our traditions are different and our politics are different and it does feel like a real thing. So maybe that's different than your town, but it feels true for my town.
Certainly other towns where I've lived, that's been an issue. But then we have to come back to who is it we're trying to create a law. What are we trying to, we keep talking about it's about the kids, but then we keep slipping into it's about the adults. That's where we have to be careful.
I was gonna say, I think this is a little bit off topic, but one interesting thing from Superintendent Bunting's testimony earlier this week around student engagement. I think one of the hard things for me about these conversations representing a large district in Chittenden County is student engagement in your rural schools looks so different in different parts of the state, like for Emily and for Leanne. And so it's really hard to measure. It's not always about the miles that you have to drive to get to school or how big or how small your school is. It's like there's something else, I think, happening in our rural areas about proximity and sort of engagement with your local school that's really sort of hard to measure and plan for. I mean, growing up in Fairhaven, if I had to drive 20 minutes to school in Rutland, that break in engagement would have been really tricky. So it's I don't know how we plan for that. I mean, it's very sort of indefinable.
And it's different engagement, really.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I will see the CVU parking lot, which draws from a large area. That place is hopping 21st, that parking lot is full at night. There is in most towns where there's no community connection between the towns, but there is robust adult education. The facilities get used by the community a ton. It is.
And how are you defining community in that case?
It's used by anybody who can drive to it, probably not just people who live in those towns, but the adult ed programs, the wood shops get used, the art spaces get used, the dark room gets used,
That's wonderful.
I know, I
I think that's definitely district dependent, and I wish every district were like that, but I
Yeah.
don't think that that's the case.
But it's just a different perspective of what
Yeah.
our community.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, no, this is what we're gonna just keep doing and keep doing and keep doing. Till we get somewhere. Go lay down the law and say, oh, we're voting on this, and this right now.
I did have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thought on the, whether or not we want to talk to people about community and your comment, that's up to communities in some ways. I think also that one thing it does for us is it helps us to talk to our own communities to say that, okay, we recognize that fear, we looked into that fear, and here are some of the things we found out.
Very good point.
Not to end on a negative note, but I'm feeling I'm feeling a little more uneasy and sort of concerned about how we're going to sort of draw the lines between the information we need now to make the next, whatever we think the next set of decisions are, and the information that some folks might suggest is going to come to us as part of implementation planning. Like I understand you can't ask for all of the
We have a
data in
chicken
the
and egg
world,
problem.
but at the same time, I'm very uncomfortable that we don't have the information we need now to make good decisions in the future. And I'm not willing to say like, we'll figure that out down the road.
It's a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of fears,
Back to group plan.
it occurred to me there, and I actually just had an email from our wonderful former committee assistant and now Education Commission of the States, some information I had asked about how states raise their taxes for education. I'm sure the Ways and Means is well versed in this, but like you kept coming up in those district creator tools and in here talking about like grand list, like having, we're sort of, that's a very different reason to group a bunch of kids together for school based on property values. If you want to dig deep and you're doing that because you want to have a really economically diverse set of students coming together, there's a lot of research behind that, because right now in this country, pretty much demography is destiny, and that's a huge inequitable thing about our society. But I don't think that's why we're talking about grand list equalization across new districts. And so if we're going to make a major fundamental piece about creating school structures based on property values, that's marrying two very, very different things. And I'm only bringing it up because I'm just reading this brief they sent me, and we actually are the, like, of all the things we do special, another one is that we are more reliant on property tax than any other state. We have, if you look at how we like bring in our and pay for everything, it's extraordinarily property tax dependent versus almost every other state. I don't know why that is. I know people do, and I'm sure that like this would be an annoying question in the money committees and for a lot of people, but suddenly we're talking about building school districts based on property value and wealth, and not because of some philosophical belief about economic diversity and wanting to bring a lot of different kids together. I might be able to get more on board with that, but I don't think I haven't heard that. It's more about property tax value and property taxes. Why do we? Again, I hate to bring us back like years in this discussion, but we're going to do everything. Why do we pay for it based on so much based on property taxes, and other states don't? And we're going to a foundation partner because that's what other states do. And that seems like it's better. But so like, we're going to change how we fund. We have to change how we collect.
But there's two parts to that. Well, of course, we do use income sensitivity, so we didn't have that piece, but today. I'm
Yeah.
saying. But there's also the other factor that we pay for more things in Vermont out of the education fund,
Yeah,
which is
that's true.
funded by property taxes, essentially, not everything, but, and that's different from many other states.
I guess I'm very uncomfortable at how much, when we're looking at these factors, we're talking about like number of kids. I'm on board with educational quality factors, class size minimums, regional middle and high schools, things that have an educational value. I understand that. Obviously, practical things like drive times matter. Redesigning an education system around property values, I need to understand better how that's like a defining principle of schools. It's a defining principle perhaps of our tax system, but it does not necessarily need to be a defining principle of our education system. I'm
We can-
struggling to make that.
We can dig in deeper. I think that the consideration was to try to make them equal.
Yeah,
And
I
part of that
understand.
is so that one district doesn't have a greater ability to raise the supplemental spending than another. And so it sort of balances that, but.
Leads me to
but-
wanting
but
to know
I was
why we're
just
so
saying,
property tax focused in our.
yeah, well, that's certainly a debate that's been going on for many
Drives a lot
years.
of decisions.
Yeah,
But I would just say that's a consideration. It's not the consideration.
seems like a pretty big one.
Yeah, well, I guess that raises the question too, like if considerations around supplemental district spending are driving really fundamental decisions, doesn't that sort of imply that we're not adequately accounting for the cost of education with our foundation formula? I mean, I know maybe that's a really dumb or a really obvious thing to say. I don't know.
I mean, well, part of the sort of compromise of what Act 73 is that and I think when it left the House, it didn't have supplemental district spending.
No,
I did.
well, it might have, but we didn't have any conversation around supplemental spending now.
Yeah, I mean, so it's in there. We could relitigate whether that's even an appropriate thing to do, because some districts will do it, some districts won't.
Yeah,
It's a minor, at 5%, it's a minor number, but I don't think that that's a.
I mean, maybe some of these issues would be solved for me. As I was suggesting before, look at the criteria and kind of think about priority and sort of what they think a little more deeply about what we all need.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
this might come into clearer focus.
Going to close here.
Yeah.
We've got to get to the floor. So take us offline. We're done for the day, everybody. That's it.